Hi all. We have seen glomerular filtration in the previous session, which is the very first step in urine formation. Now we will discuss about tubular functions, which include both tubular reabsorption and tubular secretion here in detail. Okay. And I request your full attention here because it includes a lot many important points. It may be confusing for you if you get distracted in between. Okay. So please listen completely. You know that the tubular fluid is now present in the tubular lumen, and for any substance to be reabsorbed from the fluid, it should pass from the tubular lumen to the tubular epithelium, and from epithelium it should pass on to the interstitial space, and from there, from the interstitial fluid, it enters the blood in the peritubular capillary. And for any substance to be secreted, the reverse occurs. That is, from peritubular capillary, it enters the interstitial fluid, and from there, it enters the tubular epithelium, and from the tubular cell, it enters the tubular lumen. Okay, so that is the pathway of reabsorption and secretion. Now let's see what are the functions happening in the proximal part of nephron. Proximal tubule is having a very significant role in reabsorption and secretion of substances in the tubular fluid. See, the filtered glucose and amino acids in the tubular fluid are almost completely reabsorbed from this proximal part of the nephron. And about 67% of the filtered sodium ions, potassium ions, chloride ions, bicarbonate ions, and water are reabsorbed from the proximal tubule. So this proximal tubule is having a very important role in the reabsorption, and its primary focus is on sodium reabsorption. See, you know that the tubular fluid is present in the lumen of the renal tubule, and the membrane oriented towards the lumen is called apical membrane or luminal membrane, and the membrane present in the base and sides of the cell is called basolateral membrane. And this basolateral membrane is having sodium potassium pumps. You are familiar with sodium potassium pumps. This pump helps to pump out 3 sodium ions and pump in 2 potassium ions. Okay, for every 3 sodium ions that is pumped out of the cell, 2 potassium ions enter into the cell. So this creates an electrical gradient within the cell that helps in the reabsorption of sodium ion from the tubular fluid into the cell through this apical membrane. So there are many substances which are transported along with the sodium ion. Both organic as well as inorganic solutes and water are being reabsorbed along with sodium ion. That is, they are co-transported either in the same direction or in the opposite direction. So their symport and antipode mechanisms are there for the transport of solutes, both organic and inorganic solutes and water from the tubular fluid. Okay, so they are active transport mechanism, secondary active transport mechanism, as they utilizes the energy derived from the sodium potassium pump. So the thing to be noted here is that the reabsorption of almost all the solutes and water from this segment occurs because of the sodium potassium pump. All these reabsorption of substances are linked to the functioning of the sodium potassium pump. Okay, so any malfunctioning of this pump will ultimately result in renal dysfunction. And we know that bicarbonate ion and chloride ion are the major anions in this tubular fluid. And bicarbonates are reabsorbed mainly from the first half of the proximal convoluted tubule, and chloride ions are reabsorbed from the second half of the proximal tubule. And we have said already, glucose and amino acids are completely reabsorbed. 67% of the filtered potassium ions and 67% of water are reabsorbed. So at the end of the proximal tubule, only 1/3 of sodium ion, chloride ion, and potassium ion will be there. and glucose, amino acids and bicarbonates will be completely absent. Regarding urea, only part of this urea is reabsorbed in this proximal part, and hence the concentration of urea will be higher by the end of proximal tubules. The reabsorption of sodium in the proximal tubule generates the major driving force for the reabsorption of water and other solutes in that segment. So by the constant activity of sodium, potassium, ATPase, 3 sodium ions will be pumped out of the cell and 2 potassium ions will be pumped into the cell through the sodium potassium pump in the basolateral membrane. And the sodium ions that are pumped out will enter the interstitial fluid, and the potassium ions that are pumped in will be diffusing out through the basolateral membrane via the potassium channels. So this results in an effective reduced sodium ion concentration in the cell, and that eventually results in the influx of sodium ions from the tubular fluid. So the entry of sodium ion from the luminal surface into the cells utilizes the energy generated by the sodium potassium pump, and hence this forms a secondary active transport mechanism. There are both co-transport or symport and antiport mechanisms in the luminal surface for the transport of solutes and water. Along with the reabsorption of sodium ions, glucose, amino acids and phosphates are reabsorbed in the co-transport mechanism, and the major antiport mechanism is the sodium ion hydrogen ion exchanger, which reabsorbs sodium ion into the cell in exchange for secretion of hydrogen ion into the tubular fluid. And this sodium hydrogen ion exchanger is a very important mechanism in the reabsorption of sodium ion, because it accounts for the 60% of sodium reabsorption in this segment. And the sodium reabsorption is accompanied by the reabsorption of anions, mainly bicarbonates and chloride ions, in order to maintain the electroneutrality. Sodium reabsorption in the proximal segment forms the major driving force for the reabsorption of water and other solutes in that segment. Due to the constant activity of sodium potassium ATPase, 3 sodium ions are pumped out of the cell and 2 potassium ions are pumped into the cell through the sodium potassium pump in the basolateral membrane. And the sodium ions that are pumped out enters the interstitial fluid, and the potassium ions that are pumped in will eventually diffuse out of the cell through the potassium channels. So the net effect is a lower concentration of sodium ions in the cell, which results in the influx of sodium ions from the tubular fluid. So at luminal surface, the entry of sodium ions occur by utilizing the energy generated by the sodium potassium pump on the basolateral membrane, and thus it forms a secondary active transport mechanism which includes a symport and antiport mechanisms. So the transport of substances like glucose, amino acids, phosphate, etc. occurs along with the sodium reabsorption in the same direction, and it forms a co-transport mechanism. And the major antiport mechanism is the sodium ion hydrogen ion exchanger. Here, for each sodium ion reabsorbed, a hydrogen ion is exchanged or secreted into the tubular fluid, and this antiport mechanism forms a major method of sodium reabsorption. About 60% of sodium reabsorption occurs through this sodium hydrogen exchanger antiport. And sodium reabsorption is accompanied by the reabsorption of anions like bicarbonate ion, chloride ion, etc. to maintain the electroneutrality. The bicarbonates are reabsorbed from the first half of proximal tubule along with sodium ions and organic molecules. And these bicarbonates are reabsorbed in the form of carbon dioxide. For more clarity, I have given a second picture. Don't get confused. Here, in this second picture, the lumen is on the right side. Okay, the tubular lumen is on the right side. So you should understand the picture keeping that in mind. Don't get confused with other pictures. Unlike other pictures, this picture is having its tubular lumen on the right side. Okay. So the bicarbonate, see, bicarbonate is present in the tubular fluid as sodium bicarbonate, and that will get dissociated into sodium and bicarbonate ions. The sodium ions will be reabsorbed through the sodium hydrogen ion exchanger into the cell, and this bicarbonate will combine with the hydrogen ion to form carbonic acid, and in the presence of carbonic anhydrase, it will dissociate into carbon dioxide and water, and this carbon dioxide and water will enter the tubular cell. There it again combines to form carbonic acid in the presence of carbonic anhydrase, and this carbonic acid will dissociate into hydrogen ion and bicarbonate ion. The hydrogen ion will be secreted into the tubular fluid in exchange for sodium ion, and this bicarbonate ion will be transported into the interstitial fluid via the sodium bicarbonate symporter. Along with sodium ion, this bicarbonate will be transported into the interstitial fluid, and there it combines to form sodium bicarbonate. So this is how the bicarbonate ions are reabsorbed from the tubular fluid. And simultaneous reabsorption of sodium bicarbonate and organic solutes from the proximal tubular fluid establish an osmotic gradient. So there a reabsorption of water too occurs. The sodium reabsorption in the second half of proximal tubule is associated with chloride reabsorption, and this occurs via transcellular pathway and paracellular pathway. So why this sodium reabsorption is coupled with chloride ion is because of two reasons. One is the concentration of chloride ion in the second half of proximal tubule is higher. Almost all other solutes are reabsorbed in the first half of the proximal tubule itself. And so since the concentration of chloride ion is more, the movement of sodium ion is coupled with chloride ion. And the second reason is the presence of chloride anion antiporter in the lumina membrane. So this chloride anion antiporter helps in the reabsorption of chloride ion from the tubular fluid into the cell. And this chloride ion that entered the cell will exit the cell through potassium chloride symporter in the basolateral membrane. Okay, so the chloride anion antiporter in the lumina membrane helps in the reabsorption of chloride ion from the fluid into the cell, and this chloride ion will move out of the cell through potassium chloride symporter in the basolateral membrane. So this is the transcellular pathway of chloride ion. And since the concentration of sodium ion is higher in this interstitial space, lateral interstitial space, it causes an electrical gradient that results in the transport of chloride ions from the fluid into the interstitial space through the leaky channels in the tight junction, and this is called paracellular pathway. So the chloride reabsorption occurs via transcellular and paracellular pathway, and this is coupled with the reabsorption of sodium ion. The sodium reabsorption helps in the reabsorption of organic as well as inorganic solutes, including both cations and anions, and this transfer of solutes from the tubular fluid into the interstitial space creates the osmotic gradient that helps in the reabsorption of water. And this reabsorption of water is actually of two types: obligatory water reabsorption and facultative water reabsorption. Obligatory type of water reabsorption is where the reabsorption of water occurs secondary to the sodium reabsorption. So when the sodium is reabsorbed from the tubule, the osmotic pressure is reduced, and this causes osmosis of water from the renal tubules into the cell. So it occurs in the proximal convoluted tubule. Next is facultative water reabsorption, and it is the type of water reabsorption
in which the activity of antidiuretic hormone plays a role. It is normal. It occurs in distal convoluted tubule and collecting ducts. So normally these regions are impermeable to water, but in the presence of ADH, these segments become permeable to water, so that water is reabsorbed through these segments. And this is called facultative water reabsorption. So obligatory type occurs secondary to the sodium reabsorption, and facultative type occurs due to the activity of ADH. And this water passes through the water channels or aquaporins in the cell membranes. In proximal tubules, about 65% of the filtered water is reabsorbed. And this occurs because of the reabsorption of sodium ions and other solute reabsorption that generates a transcellular osmotic gradient. And so this water reabsorption occurs via transcellular pathway and paracellular pathway. So the epithelium of proximal tubules is highly permeable to water, and the water passes through water channels of aquaporin 1 in the tubular epithelial cell membrane and water channels in paracellular route. See, there are 5 types of aquaporins in human beings. The first 3 are located in kidney tubules, 4th in the brain, and 5th in the salivary glands. So the aquaporin 1 is located in the tubular epithelial cells of proximal tubules, and so the transcellular reabsorption of water occurs through this aquaporin 1. And the paracellular route occurs through the water channels in between the cells. And when a large quantity of water, that is a bulk flow of water, is transported, what happens is it helps in the transport of ions like potassium ions and chloride ions, and it is called solvent drag. Next is the role of peritubular capillaries in water reabsorption. See, we have learned earlier that the peritubular capillaries will have a higher oncotic pressure. This is because after glomerular filtration, since the proteins are not filtered, it will be present in the blood itself in the glomerulus, and it emerges through the efferent arteriole. And by the time it reaches the peritubular capillaries, the oncotic pressure will be higher due to the increased concentration of proteins, and the hydrostatic pressure will be less. So this high oncotic pressure and low hydrostatic pressures favor the uptake of water from interstitial space into the peritubular capillary, and thus it maintains the gradient for water reabsorption from the tubular lumen into the interstitial fluid. Next is glucose reabsorption in proximal tubules. So in the proximal tubules, glucose is completely reabsorbed from the tubular fluid, and this occurs along with sodium ions. With the help of sodium potassium pump in the basolateral membrane, sodium is pumped out of the cell. This causes a lower concentration of sodium within the cell, that in turn helps in the reabsorption of sodium ions from the tubular fluid. And this carrier protein which reabsorbs sodium from the tubular fluid also reabsorbs glucose molecule. So there is the secondary active transport, that is a sympod mechanism where the sodium and the glucose are carried by the same carrier protein in the same direction. Okay, so that is a sympod mechanism. So at the luminal surface, because of the sodium glucose co-transporter, glucose is reabsorbed along with sodium ion. And now the glucose is in the cell. So from the cell, the glucose will move out into the interstitial fluid through GLUT2 transporter. Okay. That is how the glucose is reabsorbed. Here, certain terms are to be recollected that we have learned in the previous session, that is transport maximum, renal threshold, transport maximum for glucose, and renal splay. We know that transport maximum is the saturation or the maximal rate at which a solute is reabsorbed. And transport maximum for glucose is 375 milligrams per minute in males and 300 milligrams per minute in females. Then renal threshold is the plasma concentration beyond which a particular solute first appears in urine. And it is 180 milligrams per deciliter uh, for glucose. Now, renal splay is the difference between these two values, difference between the saturation and the filtration. And this renal splay happens because all the tubules are not equally functional. The transport maximum value may not be the same for all tubules, and the um, filtering capacity will not be the same for all tubules. So the difference in the reabsorption and filtration capacity results in renal splay. Next is reabsorption of proteins in the proximal tubules. Only a very small quantity of proteins are filtered by the glomerulus. That's about 7 grams per day. And these much of proteins are almost completely reabsorbed in the proximal tubules. And this happens by the secondary active symport mechanism, that is the transport of proteins by a carrier protein along with sodium ions in the same direction. Okay, so this protein reabsorption occurs by means of symport along with sodium reabsorption. Another method is by endocytosis. That is, certain enzymes are present in the cells of apical membrane which degrades the proteins into their respective amino acids, and these amino acids are pinocytosed. So from the cell, they are then transported into the interstitial fluid, and from the fluid, they later enter into the peritubular capillaries. That is how the proteins are reabsorbed. So because of these mechanisms, normally urine is protein free. But if the filtration of protein is more, or if the reabsorption of protein is less, protein may appear in urine, called proteinuria. It can also happen because of the disruption of the glomerular filtering membrane, as in glomerulonephritis. So far we have discussed about the reabsorption of solutes and water from the proximal tubules. But there are certain substances that are secreted into the proximal tubules. So there are certain organic solutes which are not filtered through the glomerular filtering membrane while the glomerular filtration, as they are adhered or bound to the protein molecules. And later, by the time they reaches the peritubular capillaries, they will be transported into the tubular cells, and from the cells they will be secreted into the tubular fluid. So there are certain substances which are secreted by the tubular epithelial cells into the tubular fluid, and this acts as an important mechanism for the elimination of such substances from the body, which includes the waste products of metabolism like uric acid, certain drugs, para-aminohippuric acid, etc. Next, we'll deal with the functions of middle portion of the nephron, that is loop of Henle. We know that cortical nephrons are having loop of Henle with thin descending limb and a thick ascending limb, whereas juxtamedullary nephrons will have a thin descending limb, thin ascending limb, and a thick ascending limb. And all these segments have different transport properties and different permeability. So let's see them in detail. Now, let's see the functions of loop of Henle. The tonicity of plasma is around 290 milliosmoles per kilogram, and the fluid entering the loop of Henle is almost isotonic to plasma. In the loop of Henle, the descending limb is permeable to water but not to solutes. So some amount of water reabsorption occurs there. Then the thin ascending limb is almost impermeable to water, and only some passive transport of sodium chloride like substances occur there. No active transport is there. And thick ascending limb is impermeable to water but permeable to solutes. So here the solutes are being reabsorbed from the thick ascending limb without reabsorption of water. So around 25% of the filtered sodium chloride and potassium ions, 35% of the filtered calcium ions, 65% of the filtered magnesium ions, and 15% of the filtered water are reabsorbed in the loop of Henle. So some amount of water reabsorption occurs in the descending limb, whereas no such water absorption occurs in the thick ascending limb. So the fluid leaving the loop of Henle becomes hypertonic with an osmolarity of about 100 milliosmoles per kilogram because the solutes are reabsorbed from the thick ascending limb without corresponding water reabsorption. The sodium reabsorption from the thick ascending limb is by the active transport mechanism dependent on the carrier protein 1 sodium 1 potassium 2 chloride cotransporter located in the apical membrane. And this cotransporter helps in the reabsorption of 1 sodium ion, 1 potassium ion and 2 chloride ion from the tubular fluid into the tubular cell. And from the cell, with the help of sodium potassium pump in the basolateral membrane, sodium ions will be transported into the interstitial fluid, and the potassium ions in the cell will diffuse through the renal outer medullary potassium channels and other potassium channels, and the chloride ion that entered the cell will be transported into the interstitial fluid with the help of the cotransporter potassium chloride cotransporter located in the basolateral membrane. So 1 sodium, 1 potassium, 2 chloride cotransporter in the apical membrane helps in the reabsorption of sodium ion, chloride ion and potassium ion, and the sodium potassium pump in the basolateral membrane, then the potassium chloride cotransporter in the basolateral membrane, and the ROMK and other potassium channels in the basolateral membrane helps in the transport of these solutes into the interstitial fluid. And because of the transfer of these solutes from the tubular fluid into the interstitial fluid, there occurs some electrochemical gradient between the tubular fluid and the interstitial fluid, which results in the paracellular transport of sodium ions, potassium ions, magnesium ions and calcium ions. And as this thick ascending limb is impermeable to water, this solute transfer is not associated with the transfer of water. And hence, as a result, the fluid that comes out of the thick ascending limb becomes hypotonic. Loop diuretics are targeting this cotransporter. You know what a diuretic is. The substances that helps in diuresis or excretion of more water from the body. They are diuretics. So loop diuretics are the substances that inhibit the sodium potassium 2 chloride cotransporter and thus increases the osmolarity of tubular fluid by inhibiting the reabsorption into the cell. See, when such loop diuretics are taken, this sodium potassium 2 chloride cotransporter will be inhibited and the reabsorption of sodium, potassium and chloride ions will not happen. So their concentration in the tubular fluid will increase and therefore the osmolarity of the tubular fluid will also increase. This results in increased excretion of water. So that is how the loop diuretics function. Next comes functions of distal portion of nephron, which includes distal convoluted tubule and collecting duct. The functions of distal convoluted tubule. Distal convoluted tubule is actually an extension of the thick ascending limb of loop of Henle. Hence, physiologically they resemble each other. That is, the distal convoluted tubule is relatively impermeable to water but permeable to solutes. So, as the solutes are
being reabsorbed from the tubular fluid, it becomes further diluted, and the solute reabsorption from the tubular fluid occurs by means of sodium ion, chloride ion, syn-porter in apical membrane. So the sodium ion, chloride ion syn-porter located in the apical membrane helps in the reabsorption of sodium ion and chloride ion from the tubular fluid. And the sodium ion that entered the cell will be transported into the interstitial fluid by means of sodium potassium pump. And the chloride ions will be transported into the interstitial fluid by means of chloride channels. And both these sodium potassium pump and chloride channels are located in the basolateral membrane. And due to the transfer of these substances from the tubular fluid into the interstitial fluid, an osmotic gradient is developed, but still there will not be any considerable amount of water reabsorption, as it is impermeable to water, relatively impermeable to water. Only 5% of water reabsorption occurs in this DCT. And the action of thiazide diuretics is targeting the sodium ion, chloride ion syn-porter located in the apical membrane of DCT. So thiazide diuretics are the diuretics like chlorothiazide. They act by inhibiting the sodium ion chloride ion co-transporter in the early part of the DCT. So what happens is that the sodium ions and chloride ions will not be reabsorbed, and the osmolality of the tubular fluid will be increased, which results in elevated excretion of water. Okay. Next is the functions of collecting duct. The transport processes across the collecting duct are influenced by the hormones aldosterone and ADH. We had learned earlier that the collecting duct consists of P cells and I cells, that is principal cells and intercalated cells. The role of principal cells is that they help to reabsorb sodium ions and secrete potassium ions. Actually, the potassium ions present in the urine, mainly it comes from the collecting duct, as this collecting duct secretes considerable amount of potassium ions. So this reabsorption of sodium ion and secretion of potassium ion is facilitated by aldosterone hormone. See, the epithelial sodium channels in the apical membrane, that is ENAC in the apical membrane, helps in the reabsorption of sodium ions. And the sodium ions that entered the cell are pumped out into the interstitial fluid by means of sodium potassium pump in the basolateral membrane. And aldosterone increases the activities of both epithelial sodium channels and sodium potassium pump. Okay, so the epithelial sodium channels help in the reabsorption of sodium ions from the apical membrane, and the sodium potassium pump helps in the transport of this sodium ions into the interstitial fluid from the tubular cell. And both these activities are influenced or facilitated by the hormone aldosterone. Now the potassium ions that are present in the tubular cell are diffused into the tubular fluid through the potassium channels. There are another type of diuretics called potassium sparing diuretics. Actually, these potassium sparing diuretics are targeting these ENAC. So what happens is that when these diuretics are administered, these epithelial sodium channels will be inhibited and the sodium reabsorption will not take place. So what happens is that the negative charge in the lumen will be reduced. There will be reduction in the negative charge in the lumen as the sodium is not reabsorbed. So it decreases the potassium secretion into the tubular fluid. As the negative charge in the lumen is reduced, the potassium secretion into the tubular fluid is prevented or reduced. Thus, the potassium excretion in the urine is decreased, and therefore they are called potassium sparing diuretics. They reduces the excretion of potassium in the urine.
Okay, so these potassium sparing diuretics will be targeting these epithelial sodium channels. Next is the role of intercalated cells. The hydrogen potassium ATP is located in the apical membrane of intercalated cells, helps in the secretion of hydrogen ions into the tubular fluid and reabsorption of potassium ion into the tubular cell, which means that intercalated cells helps in the acidification of urine by secreting hydrogen ion into the tubular fluid and conservation of potassium ion and bicarbonate ion by reabsorbing them. Principal cells help in the sodium reabsorption and secretion of potassium ions, whereas intercalated cells helps in the secretion of hydrogen ions and reabsorption of potassium ions. Reabsorption of water from the collecting duct. The collecting duct is having two portions, the cortical part and the medullary part. The collecting duct is usually impermeable to water, but in the presence of antidiuretic hormone, it becomes permeable. So the reabsorption of water and solute depends on the efficacy of ADH acting on it. In the cortical part, the water transport occurs through aquaporin 2 water channels located in the apical membrane. When the ADH combines with or binds with the vasopressin receptor, V2 receptors located in the basolateral membrane, it activates the adenyl cyclase. And this adenyl cyclase increases the production of cyclic AMP. This CAMP helps in the insertion of aquaporin 2 channels in the luminal surface, and also it helps in the formation of aquaporin 2 water channels itself. So CAMP helps in the formation of aquaporin 2 water channels and also in the insertion of these channels in the luminal surface. So otherwise impermeable collecting ducts in the presence of ADH becomes permeable to water, and this water moves out of this tubular fluid into the tubular cells through these water channels, aquaporin 2 water channels, and from the cell into the interstitial fluid. Thus, about 10% of the filtered water is reabsorbed from the tubular fluid, and thus the tubular fluid again becomes isotonic. This isotonic tubular fluid then enters the medullary portion of the collecting duct. In the medullary part of the collecting duct, the osmolality of the medullary interstitium is very high. So when the isotonic tubular fluid passes from the cortical portion into the medullary portion, due to the osmotic effect, about 5% of the filtered water is reabsorbed. The urine becomes concentrated by countercurrent mechanism, which we'll study soon, and so the tubular fluid becomes hypertonic. Okay, so in the presence of ADH, the collecting duct becomes permeable to water, and the water will be reabsorbed from the tubular fluid, thereby concentrating the urine, and the osmolality of urine may increase up to 1400 milliosmoles per kilogram. That is about 99.7% of the filtered water is reabsorbed from the tubular fluid. Whereas if ADH is absent, the collecting duct becomes impermeable to water, so that the water reabsorption is hampered and the tubular fluid continues to be hypertonic, maybe up to 30 milliosmoles per kilogram. Okay, so ADH is having an important role in the water reabsorption from collecting duct. You know about the condition diabetes insipidus. It's a condition of excess urine formation of polyuria, and this occurs because of the deficiency of antidiuretic hormone. Okay. In this slide, reabsorption of different solutes in different parts of the nephron are summarized. Only the important ones are given here. See, in the proximal convoluted tubule, the most important substance that is reabsorbed is sodium. Along with it, certain solutes like glucose, phosphates, amino acids are reabsorbed. And then from the distal half of the PCT, chloride ions are reabsorbed. Okay. So these sodium ions are reabsorbed by antiport and symbiote mechanisms. So the antiport mechanism in the apical membrane is sodium hydrogen ion exchange, and the symbiote mechanism is sodium solute symbiote. Particularly for glucose, it is SGLT1/2 transporters. And basolateral membrane, there are sodium potassium pumps, and for glucose, it is GLUC2 transporters. So in the distal half of the PCT, chloride ions are reabsorbed via chloride anion antiporter in the apical membrane and chloride potassium symporter in the basolateral membrane. About 67% of sodium is reabsorbed from the proximal convoluted tubule. Then in the thick ascending limb, sodium, chloride, and potassium ions are reabsorbed via one sodium, one potassium, two chloride co-transporter in the apical membrane. There are sodium potassium pumps, renal outer medullary potassium channels, and other potassium channels, and potassium chloride co-transport, etc. are present in the basolateral membrane for the reabsorption of these sodium, chloride, and potassium ions. About 25% of sodium is reabsorbed from the thick ascending limb. And in the distal convoluted tubule, sodium ions and chloride ions are the important ones that are reabsorbed, and they are reabsorbed via sodium chloride symporter in the apical membrane and sodium potassium pump in the basolateral membrane. About 5% of sodium is reabsorbed from DCT. And the collecting duct, sodium ions are reabsorbed through the principal cells, and potassium ions are reabsorbed by the intercalated cells. And these principal cells act through in the principal cells, sodium ion is reabsorbed via epithelial sodium channels, and potassium is reabsorbed via hydrogen potassium ATPase present in the intercalated cells. And sodium potassium pump are present in the basolateral membrane. About 3% of sodium is reabsorbed from the collecting duct. And reabsorption of water is, I have not given in the chart, but we know that about 67% of water is reabsorbed from the proximal convoluted tubule via aquaporin 1 water channels through transcellular and paracellular transport system. Then from the descending limb of loop of Henle, 15% of water is reabsorbed. And DCT and collecting duct are actually not so permeable to water, but in the presence of aldosterone and ADH, it becomes permeable to water. So from the DCT, about 5% of water is reabsorbed, and from the collecting duct, both cortical and medullary part together reabsorbs about 15% of the water in presence of ADH. Whereas if ADH is absent, about 2% of water is only reabsorbed from the tubular fluid in the collecting duct segment. So this is the nutshell of this reabsorption of solutes.
Tubular secretion is the process by which certain substances are transported from the blood into the tubular fluid. It's also known as tubular excretion. In the proximal part of the nephron, we have seen certain substances that are secreted into the tubules, like para-aminohypuric acid, certain drugs, uric acid, etc. So here, the substances which are secreted in different segments of the renal tubule are listed. Potassium ions are secreted into the renal tubules at proximal tubules, distal tubules, and collecting duct. Ammonia is secreted into the proximal convoluted tubule. Hydrogen ion is secreted into proximal and distal convoluted tubule. Urea is secreted in the loop of Henle. The whole of the functions of nephron can be summarized as 1. Glomerular filtration, which is the very first step in urine formation that occurs in renal corpuscle in a rate of 125 milliliters per minute, and the filtrate formed is isotonic to plasma. When it reaches the proximal convoluted tubule, about 67% of water, sodium ion, potassium ion, chloride ion, almost all of glucose, amino acids, phosphates, then 80 to 90% of bicarbonates, and about 50% of urea are reabsorbed from the tubular fluid.
and certain substances like hydrogen ion, ammonia, creatinine, etc. are secreted into the tubular fluid at proximal convoluted tubule. And at the end of proximal convoluted tubule, the tonicity of tubular fluid will be same as that of plasma. And when it reaches the loop of Henle, water, sodium ion, potassium ion, chloride ion are reabsorbed. Water is reabsorbed from the thin descending segment. Sodium ion, potassium ion, chloride ion are reabsorbed from the thick ascending segment of loop of Henle. Then urea, creatinine, etc. are secreted into the loop. And at the end of the loop of Henle, the fluid becomes hypertonic. And then it passes through the distal convoluted tubule where water, sodium ions and chloride ions are reabsorbed. At the end of the distal tubules, the fluid again becomes hypertonic. Then it reaches the collecting duct where reabsorption of water, sodium ions, urea, etc. take place, and the secretion of potassium ions, hydrogen ions and urea occurs. So this is how the nephron functions in the formation of urine. So by the time this filtrate passes through the collecting duct, it becomes hypertonic, having an osmolality of 1200 milliosmoles per liter. Thank you all for your attention. If you have any doubts, please feel free to ask the doubts. Okay, bye.